to another episode of Expansive and Unscripted. I'm excited to be here with Lauren Goldberg today, who is a social impact entrepreneur and disability justice advocate. And we've had some really amazing conversations in the past about neuroinclusion, accessibility, disability justice. And so I'm excited to share one of our conversations with our our broader audience and community. Welcome, Lauren.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So I'm curious. So in some of our conversations before, you've talked about like you do coaching work. A lot of it is around kind of helping people find what lights them up. What is their truest self, which is such important work for so many of us. I think, especially with historically excluded identities, that we have had many identities imposed on us by society, by
Mm-hmm.
family, by schools. People have decided for us who we are and what we're about. And so I think the work that you do is so vital, especially for folks who are coming into their neurodivergence later in life, coming into their queerness, into their gender expansiveness later in life.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I would love for you to share a little bit about what sparked that work for you, and how you do that.
Yeah, so I am a coach, mostly for social impact driven professionals who are experiencing some sort of what I call career identity crisis. Typically, that's how folks find me. And then the work that we do together goes well beyond just figuring out their career strategy. It goes deeper than that. It's building self compassion muscles, it's recognizing and excavating the influences of toxic professionalism, another term that I use,
Mhm.
on our careers and our lives, and the way that we feel like we have to exist in the world and fit into a box. And then building building a toolkit of self-advocacy tools and communication, and that can go for folks with disabilities, or that could go for anybody who just
Mhm.
you know, can recognize their non-negotiable needs and be firm about um, like advocating for themselves and others and causes that they care about.
Yeah, I love that. And I love what you said about, for folks with disabilities and folks who, like anybody who recognizes they have non-negotiable needs. I love that. And I am also on a mission to, like, can we just normalize needs as needs and not, have to separate out like disabled people's needs and neurodivergent people's needs. Like, we all have them. And
Mm-hmm.
if we normalized checking in with each other, and, in workplaces, I'm on this mission to, like, what if, everybody in their onboarding shared about what their needs are, whether it's like physical devices, ergonomic things, or
Mm-hmm.
whether it's about scheduling and capacity and time of day that they work and learning styles, those kinds of things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. And I feel like a lot of the a lot of the times I'm talking about self accommodation with my coaching clients, but there needs to be both. There needs to be
Mhm.
self accommodation, and there needs to be uh, the the accommodation from our who we're spending our time with, and environments
Mhm.
that we're operating in. And so much of our world has not been set up with disability in mind. And so um, yeah, I think that, like, the more that we're able to recognize that we're worthy of having those
Mhm.
accommodations met, and advocating for them, you know it's a it's not only building awareness, but it's just showing people that there are other ways to thrive in this
Mm.
world.
Yes. How do you? um, if you have a client who is navigating accommodating themselves like in their personal life, how do you support someone, because this is something I hear a lot, and something I have also struggled with as a person, as a human being, navigating when folks are hesitant to ask for what they need because they're afraid of being a burden on others, or they're afraid of maybe losing a friendship because, like, well, like my friend's not on the same wavelength with, masking or social distancing like I am, still doing COVID protocols. So I'll just like go without so that I'm not a burden. How do you work with that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I would probably start with um, figuring out um, what is your inner Billy telling you? What
Mm,
are those, like, what is that voice in your head that's saying, like, you can't do this? Um, and and also revealing, like, where does that come from? Because I think just
mm,
having the awareness of that piece is the first step to excavate the status quo and the BS standards that just don't um, that don't work for us as
yes.
humans, right? Not just for anybody. Um, so yeah, just figuring out what that inner bully is saying, and figuring out what does self-compassion look like in
Mm,
this scenario. And that's just the start, right? That's just the beginning
yes.
of building that self-compassion, right? And part of the change work is recognizing how how that voice, what that voice sounds like. And
Mm,
and maybe we do a little bit of unconscious pattern disruption work after that, where um, I'll ask you, like, well, what does that voice sound like, and how do we change that
mm,
voice? And just basically, like, reassociate, break that old association, and create new associations, and actually creating new pathways in your brain, new, like, neural pathways in your brain.
yeah.
um, because that voice, that inner bully voice, those intrusive thoughts, um, that that's a habit, right? So we
Mhm.
need to break that habit, and create new ones and new associations. So that's a little bit of, like, how we would get started working on that.
Yeah, I love that. And I appreciate that you also highlight, kind of um, naming where those thoughts come from. And I think that's part of what, like, when I talk about people have imposed identities on us, people have imposed that the idea that we are a burden if we have needs that need accommodating. Um, I know for a lot of folks who are kind of coming into awareness of disability identity or neurodivergent identity later in life, um, we've had a long history of accommodating everybody else around us because oftentimes it was like, well, you're the odd one out, so you have to conform to the majority group
Mhm.
rather than, oh, maybe you're onto something and you have, something to show us. So I think it's this.
Mhm.
It is it's a lot of deep work to shift
Mm.
into that place of like I deserve to have my needs met and I am worthy of being accommodated while simultaneously navigating how I can accommodate others in a boundaried way, in a reciprocal
Mhm.
way,
Mhm.
versus like a one-sided way.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that you know, a lot of the kind of ableist mainstream messaging and what we're taught, and how we, are how we learn to navigate the world with a disability is, the messages that we receive are like, you should not be making other people feel uncomfortable. right?
Mm-hmm.
You shouldn't be talking about the thing that could make other people uncomfortable. And the truth is, like, we can't possibly do all of the management of other people's discomfort. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, especially when it's like our existence
Mm-hmm.
as disabled people could make other people uncomfortable, right? That's like, it's not on us. It's
Yeah.
not our job to make sure that everyone else around us is comfortable with our existence. And that burden is put on disabled people. And that's something that I really, you know, I hope changes as we not only build awareness, but we also recognize that, yeah, everybody's like, everybody's existence is, yeah, just, yeah, that it's not on disabled people to manage other people's like comfort level of our existence and the way that we navigate the world.
Yeah. And I see a lot of how, at least in the US, so much of our culture has this kind of like, it's unspoken in mainstream. It's very well known in the disability community of, I mean, essentially like ability apartheid, right? Like so many schools have students who are like special needs, often some like completely other building from the rest of students. So there's not integration, there's a separation. And so kids aren't learning how to interact and how autistics communicate, how all different kinds of identities communicate. We see that in, I think we do that a lot with elders too, kind of putting away elders to be separate so we don't have to see like aging people, right? There's so much of our society that has this fear and terror of aging. And I think then our culture will set up the disabled people who are allowed to be visible are, the inspirations, that ableist line of like, I'm not letting this get in the way of, what I've always been doing with my life. And I want to be clear, I totally affirm anyone doing whatever they want with their life and their circumstances. And also, there is no right way to be disabled. There is no good way. Like, there's not good disabled people and bad disabled people in terms of like, ooh, they're doing disability wrong. Like,
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And something I thought of while you were talking too was, I can't remember where I read this, but it was just that being disabled is the ultimate vulnerability, right? You have to be open about what you can and can't do, but that also means you have to be open to, like, you don't have to, but being open about what your needs are, and recognizing that you're worthy of advocating for those needs. Yeah, I just like, I don't know, I feel like I am still kind of digesting that quote, that disability is the ultimate vulnerability. But yeah, that also can make like other people uncomfortable because they're not exposed to it, they're not used to it, they've been, it's kind of been hidden away. And for so long with my hearing aids, like I got hearing aids when I was 17 and I had long hair and I, covered them up, and hearing aids are designed to be discreet, to be hidden, to be, oh, they're so small, no one will even notice them. That's like, and now I'm decorating them with different like colored tubes. You can't even really like see, but I
That's
have a
so cool.
purple like tube decoration on them, and they're pink. They're pink hearing aids. My audiologist was like, we've never had anybody order pink hearing aids from us before. It's okay for kids to have like bright colored hearing aids, but not adults, right?
Right.
So I'm waiting for the time where hearing aids are, an assistive technology, the way glasses have become
Yes.
an assistive technology. Like they're part of your fashion. They're part of your the way that you express yourself. And yeah, so I, definitely like kind of been like a journey in my own internalized ableism, going from hiding my disabilities to being like, here they are. I want everyone to know, I want everyone to, I'm going to wear big earrings. I'm going to decorate my hearing aids. I'm going to talk about this. I have a microphone, a mini microphone that's Bluetooth enabled that streams into my hearing aid. So I use that for like loud restaurants and bars, and like when I'm meeting new people, like networking events. And so I have to explain to people what this thing is.
Yeah.
And nobody's like burdened by it. People, I think it's also the way that I explain it, in like with enthusiasm and with like, I guess gratitude that I, have this thing that can help me operate in an environment that is not designed for me.
Yeah.
And people think that's really cool. So, I've seen the like people getting excited to learn about it, and that's really promising.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so much happening in the assistive tech realm that is exciting and very hopeful. I've recently came upon this organization in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania called Tech Owl, which stands for Tech Our Whole Lives. And they have like a whole library of devices that people can try out before they purchase their own or even rent. They have this catalog um, of devices that they print off their 3D printer and give those away for free or share the design so people can print their own, can opener or bottle opener and things that just help with so many different tasks that can be challenging, whether there's injury or illness or any other kind of interference, which is just beautiful and amazing. And organizations like that definitely need more time in the spotlight and community support. Because like you said, like tech is only, you know, there's so much controversy around AI, and I have my own thoughts and feelings about it. But like, can we please harness it for things like assistive technology and making life easier for all of us across the board? Like, can we get AI to do my dishes or something? Because like, I don't,
Seriously.
I don't want AI to do all the artwork. I want to do some creative stuff. Like, give it the chores.
Yeah. And again, like you were saying, there's no wrong way to do disability. There, a lot of technology is a privilege, and a lot of it is a choice. So, there are a lot of deaf people who don't use hearing aids, who don't get cochlear implants, who, they want to use sign language, and that's like there is no wrong way,
Yeah.
like you said, to do disability, and to you get to decide how you, you know, um, how you want to live your life and how you're going to best thrive. And, you know, everybody's on their own journey with that. And so, you know, I think that there's this expectation for people with disabilities that like, oh, well, you should just get a tool to help you fix that. Right. And it's not that. It's so oversimplified and so like, you know, yeah, I think there's some nuance there that
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people don't recognize.
Absolutely. Yeah, if you talk to 100 disabled people, you'll get 100 different answers about, different things in terms of, um, some folks kind of connect with their disability in like disability pride and identity, like you were saying. Like, I know so many people who have like canes as walking mobility aids, and they like pip them out, bedazzle them and do whatever. I know some folks who use wheelchairs for mobility, and they have these awesome like artwork panels that go in their wheels that are just like cool, amazing pieces of
Yeah,
artwork on wheels.
I love that.
Um, and yeah, so you have kind of like the pride. I'm going to be open and not be hiding this. I'm going to make it obvious because I'm tired of hiding these things. You have folks who are like, this is part of my identity. This is not like um, a disorder or like a problem that needs to be fixed. This is part of who I
Mm.
am and how I work. And there's also elements like I very much see my autistic, ADHD, other learning differences and neurodivergences as part of my identity. And there are things that I love that I don't think like need fixing, and I don't see it as something that like needs to be cured. And also there are elements, if I got to pick and choose, yeah, I would like to do away with the executive dysfunction kind of stuff, or like the spotty capacity that I can't always predict or control, right? Like, sure,
Mhm.
I'd give those things up. But even still, like, I'm not something to be cured. Um,
Mhm.
and I
Yeah.
think that's part of, um, like, when we talk about disability justice and the idea of like moving from medical model to social model, that's part of what I see around the building identity around this, and then also connecting with others who have some of that shared identity.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's kind of how I started down this disability justice path. I did not, I mean, until I was, you know, like a few years ago, in my 20s, I did not identify strongly as a disabled person. Um, and I actually didn't even consider myself deaf. That was just like, I felt like those words didn't belong to me. And it wasn't until I started exploring American Sign Language and deaf culture, learning about deaf culture in parallel, and reading works, um, and following disabled content creators on social media, um, and also like specifically business owners and other entrepreneurs
Mm,
who were disabled and were very vocal about that, um, in their messaging and in their like representation of themselves. It definitely opened up my eyes to, again, like other ways of existing in the world and a self acceptance
mm,
in my own disabilities. And so I feel like that kind of started the whole journey of like really digging deeper into my own internalized ableism, my own, you know, the ways that I viewed myself and um, thinking that my ears were just broken, and that, I also have ADHD and dyslexia. So feeling like being in school was such a stressful, anxiety-inducing thing. I was, always the last one to finish tests. I was always the slowest one to do assignments and to pick up on things. But once I got it, like I really got it, and I did well in school because of that. But it took me longer to just, I just had to do things my own way. Right.
Yeah.
And, but growing up in a mainstream culture, the messages I was getting was, like, you're doing it wrong. You're supposed to fit into this box,
Yeah.
and time is money, so you got to be quick. And yeah, so there was just a lot of those influences that, even coming from my family, which, I know that my family loves me and everything they've done for me is well intentioned, but kind of unlearning some of those views has enabled me to teach them, and expose new ways of living and thinking about disability to people who are close to me. And so, so that's why, like, now I'm so vocal about it, because I found other people and a community who are vocal about it. And I think at first, like we were saying before, how you're taught you got to make people feel comfortable with your existence, like to unlearn that.
Yeah.
And finally just talk about disability. I mean, I think the first post that I made where I decorated my hearing aids, I seriously went into like a nervous system, like my nervous system was just like freaking out after I posted that. Like, oh my God, I can't believe I posted a picture of my hearing aids online for the whole world, right? Like I was supposed to be hiding them. I was supposed to be, right, supposed to be quiet about that. And like to be loud and vocal and to decorate them, it was so empowering. And that was like the most likes I got on a post, like ever or something, like up until that point. So it was just, I was like, okay, this is actually something that is safe for me to talk about. I actually needed to, like, my nervous system needed to learn that it was safe for me to be vocal. And I know that not identity group like feels that same safety in posting about their, their circumstances and what they're doing to, like combat the norms.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate you talking about your journey. And, so much is similar for me too. I am like late to the party of realizing all the things about so many things about myself. In my late 30s and 40s. And yeah, there's a place where I had very ableist ways of thinking and navigating the world. And some of my own experiences and the experiences of others, part of that is like having disabled friends and getting to know, like, oh, this is your reality. Following disabled people on social media and having those little glimpses into their lives of, things like that. I mean, we can't all think about every possible scenario. That's realistic. There are so many like infinite variations of disability and combinations, right?
Yep.
But there are things like this one person I follow, she goes by Disabled Icon. She often uses a wheelchair. Mostly uses a wheelchair. And she was doing this series on like tours of bathrooms that were like supposedly accessible. And it just was so like, oh my gosh, how did I not think about that? Things like, okay, this is an accessible bathroom. That's great. Da-da-da, go through the whole process, get to the trash can. Oh, it's a pedal step open trash can. Well, if I'm in a wheelchair, I'm not stepping on any pedals to open the trash can. So what am I supposed to do with my trash? And she was like, honestly, I just like left it on top because that's kind of like how I'm doing my rebellion these days. But it's things like that that, you know, there's like an attempt and maybe it's halfway or not thoroughly thought through, which I think is part of the um part of like not having disabled people at the helm of design and, you know, like space design and product design. um you know, there are conferences that I have wanted to attend that are about like disabilities and neuro inclusion that are not actually accessible. And so it's like, oh, you know, I always have half a mind like maybe I should write to them and be like, hey, for next year, I would love for you to hire me as a consultant to advise on some of these things that
Yes.
like you're speaking on the topics, but the actual event itself doesn't doesn't allow for like the very people that you're talking about to show up and be present and have a good experience.
Yeah, and every design decision that you make sends a message to the people who are using that space. Is this for me or is this not for me? Do I
Yeah.
belong here or do I not belong here? Right. And it's not necessarily so black and white, but like we you know, progress over perfectionism. And every time we continue to make changes, there'll be 100 more changes that we can make. And like as long as we're taking steps in the right direction, and like we are hiring consultants, we are talking to people with disabilities, we are not just checking a box by, you know, like offering disabled parking, you know, it's just like it's beyond that. It's like trying to think deeper about the design of things before the implementation. And I'm learning things every day, and I like, you know, on my to-do list is to get somebody to help me like make my website more accessible. I know that it could be better. I know like some of the colors are not great, and I know not some of the you know, like just there are places where I can add like more accessible text and image descriptions and things like that. I just, you know, again, one step at a time. So
Yes.
that's also a place where we can have self-compassion. And as long as we're taking steps forward and working on progress over perfection, I think that's like something that people get overwhelmed by, like, how could I possibly do all the things? It's like one foot in front of the other, or one, you know, wheel in front of the I don't know, that, see, that even that phrase that I just used is like it is
Yeah.
it's a mainstream phrase, right? But
It's not
it's
inclusive.
not inclusive. Exactly. Yeah. So what other, you know, what other language can we use? So that was that right there was a perfect example. Like, okay,
Yes.
I recognize that you know, I need to make a change.
Yes, I was talking, I think in our last episode with Dan Levy, we were talking about this, like, you know, just these common phrases like, okay, what are the next steps that, you know, is exclusive. I'm looking forward to talking with you. That's exclusive. So alternatives could be, I'm looking forward to the next time we connect. Or, you know, okay, so you know, the next things we're going to do or the next to do item. um you know, it's, yeah, there's just like so many other possibilities,
Yeah.
but some of the language is so just
Yeah.
vernacular.
Right. We don't even think about it because it's just part of our, yeah, it's just yeah, that's what that's what, how we've been taught to speak. It's just, I was at a wedding a few weeks ago, and I was meeting somebody new, and we had been talking about, my hearing aid. I had my microphone, my Bluetooth mic, so um, we were using that to talk in this loud environment, and talking about sign language and how sign language isn't universal, and deaf culture, and we were talking all about this, and then she started talking about her her partner and his work, and how his work wasn't going well. I love talking about work culture, and like learning about people's um, you know careers as a career focused coach. um, and she was like, oh yeah, and the leadership, and she said something that I didn't hear, and so I said, can you repeat that? And she goes, actually, I don't think I do. Because what she had said was, yeah, everything that said falls on deaf ears. And she kind of just like, she was like, oh wait, yeah, that's not something I want to say anymore. Like, and she was like talking to a deaf person, so she just, we had already sort of like built a you know rapport that was, like a safe space for
Mhm.
her to be like, oh, that's not how I want to talk. And we kind of like,
Mhm.
I was able to be like, yeah, and I appreciate you recognizing that. And like,
Mhm.
it was, just
Yeah.
one of those moments.
Yes. Yes. And I think as we practice that self-compassion, we're also like being safer spaces for ourselves to practice, to mess up, to learn something
Yeah.
new, as well
Right.
as other people.
Hmm.
When I'm in communities of folks who are committed to disability justice, committed to like when we know better, we do better. There's not like shaming around like, hey, maybe that's not the best way to say that. What if you said this? There's more like, oh, yeah, thank you for like helping me to see that and teaching me a new way of looking at it. And
Hmm. Hmm.
I know when I'm in a space that feels safe to make mistakes and learn a new way, that one that builds trust with the people I'm there with. And it also makes me feel more confident about kind of like going out into the world where I don't have like my safer people and, being out there. So it's definitely like I've heard some people be like, "Oh, it's so hard because like I read a post from somebody the other day. They're like, neurodivergent people are so like angry and resentful. It's like you can't say the wrong thing and you just
Yeah.
get blasted." And I just want to say for myself too, like I have moments where I've dealt with a number of microaggressions and then, some poor soul says something that is like, the final blow. And I'm not always going to respond with like gentleness and kindness and whatever. And I mean, this is talked about across the board and historically excluded identities. Like Black people are always talking about like stop tone policing, stop demanding like respectability from us. Like, yeah, we're pissed off and angry because this is so hard and frustrating, and we've been screaming at the top of our lungs and nobody has been listening. And so I
Hmm.
just want to also make space for like sometimes we're gonna come in, like barreling in with like rough and rugged responses or language or frustration or tone of anger and rage. And we also have a right to those feelings too. Um, because,
Hmm.
just like you talk about disability justice, that exists because there's so much disability injustice. And we have a right to be angry about that. And, like it's part of that give and take of understanding Like, hey, I might not be angry at this person particularly. I'm angry at the system, but like, don't stifle that anger. Let us express it, because then I'm going to be angry at you if you censor me.
Well, I'm so glad that you said that, because I was actually, that was something that I saw recently in a post about like the anger from the neurodivergent community. And it was actually something I wanted to ask you about. So you went there though already, so it was great.
Yes.
And I don't have anything. I don't have anything to add, because I think that's yeah, I agree. I agree with you.
Yeah. I sometimes, so once upon a time when I was living in Los Angeles, I was part of the spoken word community. And spoken word, spoken poetry is very much about being like provocative and dropping these truth bombs, right? And like getting a reaction. And so many times in my like thought leadership advocacy journey, I find myself like, ooh, maybe I need to like rein in the spoken word part of me that's like, I don't care if you're comfortable. I'm going to say my truth and you just have to deal with it. And I think that there's a balance, right? Like I don't want to dilute myself and my truth. And also I want to know, I want to navigate spaces so that like people can actually hear what I have to say. But as a person who is passionate and vibrant with their feelings and who believes that like, any oppressed, historically excluded identity, rage is sacred, and there needs to be space for that expressed without censorship. um it's challenging sometimes navigating like what's appropriate and professional, what do I want to be like neurodefiant about, and be like, you know what, here's a new way to be professional. And when do I want to be absolutely unapologetically a menace to what has been normal?
Yeah. I mean, and like as I mentioned earlier, I talk a lot about toxic professionalism, and the roots of that are in capitalist culture and accommodating a capitalist like a capitalist society. It's in white supremacy, which is, there are there's kind of an like a foundation for white of what's acceptable behavior according to white culture, white supremacy, and and ableism, and like so many of these isms and these oppressive systems. I feel like I'm preaching to the choir here, but like they fuel the way that we see like what's acceptable, what's unacceptable, what is like professional, or what is professionalism. And I think a lot of that just forces us to be like putting on an act. It's like all of us masking, right? Like in neurodivergent community, like we're many of us are familiar with this idea of masking to kind of like appear neurotypical, if there was such a thing as neurotypical, which is another whole conversation. But this like understanding of what neurotypical is like in line with that, what we've been taught is professional, what we've taught is acceptable, what we've taught is normal, which is also weird. I just don't think that we should, use, we should not use, right, to talk about. So it's just, where was I going with that? But yeah, just that. So challenging that, even in small ways, can be like figuring out what pieces you feel safe revealing about yourself at work, or the way that you talk about things and your ideas, and expressing your needs and expressing your opinions. And I think that was something that, like, I've been kind of like laughing to myself a little bit recently, reflecting back on like how I was in middle school. And I had I had someone that I ate lunch with every day tell me, like, you're really opinionated. And that's still true, that I have opinions, but I think that I have evolved to have opinions that I think like are worth expressing, like that I feel very strongly that they need to be out in the world. And so professionalism would, toxic professionalism would teach us that just stay quiet, keep your opinions to yourself, make everybody feel comfortable, right? Like, that's kind of the theme here, is like, how, making everybody else feel comfortable, but we're not actually like saying what we feel like really needs to be said. And how do we create workplaces where people feel like it's safe to say what they really feel like is needed to be said, to make change, to accommodate, to make a more accessible and accommodating workplace for more people.
Yes, absolutely. And I appreciate how you spoke about, kind of like when we go out on a limb to share something, that's out of our comfort zone, that's creating a safer space for someone else. And I think about the different intersections. We can't talk about toxic professionalism without talking about the racism of hairstyles and dress code and all these kinds of things, where like there had to be made a law, what is it, the Crown Act, that allows Black people to wear natural hair in the workplace. Like, what the fuck? Like, that's just ridiculous and racist. So, I think about, like, at these different intersections, I, as a white person, have privilege. It may be safer for me to speak up about the racism of professionalism in certain settings, to shine a light on it. And so, that's where I need to leverage the privilege that I have to, like, push things forward. There may be spaces in which another person has, abled privilege, that they can push forward something that is like harder or more vulnerable or more risky for me to talk about. And so I think that's where, like, when I talk about neuroinclusion, I'm like, it's everything. Like, neuroinclusion is addressing racism, is addressing, genderism, is addressing queer and transphobia, all of these things. Because neuroinclusion is about deconstructing colonizer white supremacy. So we need another like 10 episodes for that conversation. But so I am loving this conversation. I just like realized the time and need to wrap us up. I'm just so grateful for you and the discussion that we've been having. If folks want to connect with you, if they are, looking for someone to kind of sort through career questions, how can they be in touch with you? And do you have any like particular programs, offerings that are happening right now?
Yeah, so anybody who's interested in exploring coaching together, I work with folks who are career changers or in a career transition or considering a career transition, and identity, like, navigating that like career identity crisis, sort of feeling lost. Um, I I work with folks kind of in that stage of their careers. I also work with folks who are leaders or people who are not even really sure what the next step is for them. Like, what does leadership look like for them?
Mm.
And can they be a leader as an individual contributor? Again, what does that path look like for them? So some of the like career strategy questions, and big life, big juicy life questions too. So getting some clarity and confidence in those areas. And then I also work with small business owners, so those folks who are either just getting started or trying to get re-energized in their small business. I work with those folks too. So if that resonates with you and you want to have a chat, I have exploratory sessions, so we can set up a time to talk and explore and make sure that we're a good fit to work together. And yeah, my my website is laurengoldbergcoaching.com. Feel free to connect with me or send me a LinkedIn request. I'm on Instagram. I'm on YouTube.
We'll
Yeah.
put all those
So
links
yeah.
in with the show so folks don't have to remember where to go. Thank you. And if there's one thing or a small handful of things that you want listeners to kind of walk away from this conversation, what would that be for you?
So I really love for people to recognize that disability is not the obstacle to overcome. It is the way that we design the world. It is the way that we, the ableist kind of systems that we have in place. So I think another thing that we, like a big theme that we talked about today, was progress over perfectionism.
Yes.
And recognizing that, even just a few steps forward, or a few actions.
Yes.
Yes, as I try to correct my own language to be more inclusive, uh, a few actions at a time can make a big difference. And yeah, progress over perfectionism.
I love that. And I love what you said about differentiating. It's the environments and the systems that are inaccessible and disabling versus
Yes.
individuals who are problematic or burdensome or difficult. I love
Yes.
that.
Yeah,
Thank you so
exactly.
much for being here and joining us. And I just look forward to keep being in community with you, Lauren, and seeing what you're doing in the world.
Yes, thanks for having me. I enjoyed our chat. Hope we can do it again sometime.
Yes. And folks listening, stay tuned for another episode of Expansive and Unscripted next week.